Yo guys, welcome back to another Five Nights Start Event video, and today we've got a pretty special one because as you can hear, I have a new mic and I have a new little avatar. I hope you guys will like that. But anyways, as for the video itself, we are doing another tier list. So it's already been 4 weeks since I've done my last tier list, and basically I was waiting for the next big update, which would be Fnaf 4, and it's already been like 2 weeks or more since the Fnaf 4 update, and we've actually gotten like even more characters after Fnaf 4. And yeah, there's a lot of things that we have to go through. We're actually also going to get another big update this weekend with more evolutions and with a new event, because right now we have the military event, but we're going to be getting a Western event. So we're gonna probably expect to see like another 10 characters or so, and of course I will be live streaming that. But yeah, I need to update my tier list as soon as possible. So some things to mention: there's been a couple of balance changes which we will be talking about in a second, and also they haven't updated the DPS chart for some characters, specifically the new evolutions. So I don't have the best showing of these characters. However, thanks to the wiki, I have seen their actual DPS, and there is some characters that I will get into where I'm not completely sure where they rank. But yeah, of course I'm pretty confident enough in the placings for all these characters, and I really need to update my tier list pretty badly. So yeah, let's just get right into it. Alright, so starting off, we're going to be ranking the characters who have had some balance changes since the last tier list, with some buffs and then one nerf, and also one character who has a pretty different placement since last tier list. So we'll go ahead and start off with Leviathan Mango, who I think reaches at the top of A tier. I think he will stay there. So yeah, let's just go over his buffs real quick. Basically, all his buff was is he has a third placement, which is pretty big because that increases his DPS from 3,000 up to 4,500, which is comparable to a lot of the characters in S tier. However, when you first place him down like at level 1, his DPS is just really bad. It only skyrockets when he's level 4, which at this point makes him a lot worse than the other contenders who are in S tier. And his biggest flaw is basically just that and his range, all of which just makes him notably worse. So I think he will just be at the top of A. Like, he's still really good, but he's not quite S tier. And also really quick, Leviathan and Valkyrie Chica will be getting an evolution this weekend as well. So there's the evolutions that I was talking about, plus some more evolutions that we don't know about yet, and as well as Shadow Bonnie right here. So their evolutions are most likely going to be S tier, potentially top 3, but we will have to see about that. But yeah, like the normal cards themselves are actually still really good, like Shadow Bonnie, Leviathan, and this Valkyrie Chica, which we will go ahead and rank now. They're in S tier. They're not in top of S tier, and they're not top 3, which is also probably quite surprising since there is a best solo target DPS character. You guys will see who I think that is pretty soon. But yeah, let's go ahead and move on. And yeah, it's not going to be War Machine who's the best solo DPS, but he's actually still really good, which is why he's in S tier. I still use him. He's pretty crazy, like, for what he is. I also would like to mention that in this meta now, single target characters are really bad now. Like, so okay, so they're not really bad. They're just noticeably worse than AoE characters now, because right now in the hardest events, it's obviously like story mode, like Fnaf 4, and Endless. Endless is the biggest thing, and Endless was kind of like the big solo DPS defender. Like, if you had a character who did a lot of good solo DPS, and they would do good in Endless because the splash effect wouldn't really matter that much. Ever since the Endless update though, they structured it differently, where it is now better to have some sort of AoE mechanic to do good in there. Now obviously you do have to still do a lot of DPS as well, but you can just tell single target characters just feel way weaker in those events. And at this point, single target characters have to do insanely more DPS than these AoE characters, or they're only really good at the start of events where they don't get overwhelmed, and of course are pretty cheap. Like, these two characters are really cheap for what they are, and just basically help out at like the start of events and whatnot. So yeah, I'm gonna keep them there for now. I think the next tier list I will do will be way more accurate. They also recently did an update where you can see how much DPS every character has done, and I feel like that is extremely valuable information. I will probably end up doing like some little maybe mini series where I'll be comparing all these characters to each other, and I'll have like a really good example and like be able to actually compare these characters very fairly with their actual DPS showing. Like you can see how much more valuable AoE characters are than solo DPS characters are when their actual damage they've dealt shows. But yeah, for now we're just gonna do this tier list with stuff that I already know of so far. So next is Glitch Puppeteer. Glitch Puppeteer is someone who got a nerf. However, I still think that they are an S tier, probably behind Valkyrie Chica still. Also, I forgot to mention Valkyrie Chica. Her buff was another placement as well, and then her DPS is now at 6,400. And now that I'm thinking about it, Glitch Puppeteer is only 1,000 less DPS with the splash mechanic and better range. I do think he does end up being slightly better, but I think in this case it can be pretty close because Glitch Puppeteer, his nerf is that now he costs 20,000 to place, and as you can see here, he used to cost 12,500, which is a huge difference, and honestly made him a lot worse, which is why he's no longer going to be top 3. But yeah, he's still obviously a very good character despite all that. His splash mechanic is actually on the worst side, like it doesn't splash as much as other characters that we will see on this list, but him just having it is still really good. So yeah, he's still deserving of a very high placement in this tier list. Next up we have Circuit Breaker Freddy, who will be the last character we will be showing off from our last tier list. Every character from now on is going to be a new character, except for 2 characters that I'm trying to save for a little reveal. But yeah, this guy is just in A tier now at this point, below Leviathan. So yeah, I wasn't really kidding when I said single target DPS is a lot worse now. And also, he used to be really close to Valkyrie, but ever since Valkyrie got a buff, and there's of course a lot of new characters that are in the roster that are just superior, I think he ends up being an A tier, which is still very good. But yeah, his DPS is 4,500, which is a pretty big difference from Valkyrie Chica now, and he also still has less range. At least he does cost less to place down and max out, but yeah, overall he's just not very meta. So now we're gonna go ahead and start ranking the characters from the Fnaf 4 update. I actually think this Crying Child was right before the update, but I still need to rank him, of course. I think this character was very polarizing. Like, people at first thought he was really bad. However, I think he belongs in A tier, very good with this endo. And yeah, I'm still putting the supports at the very end of their respective tiers, because it's obviously really hard to compare support characters to actual characters, but they still belong in the tiers that they are in. Like, this Bonnie is just like the best support. I'll just say that right now. He's the best support in the game, and he belongs in S tier because he's the best support. And then next up, we have very good supports who are still extremely good, which is the Endo and the Crying Child. Crying Child's value, I think he probably could just literally be above this Endo as well. Like, I don't mind doing that. He helps out so much and is literally a must-have in Endless, because there's characters in Endless who just move really fast. So having a slowing character helps out so much. But he's not necessarily a must-have, because there's actually another character we will be talking about soon who kind of replaces his role in Endless. So honestly, he probably would be like in this tier if that character didn't exist. But yeah, like, Sati actually isn't the best slowing character. He's still the best for like his cost. Like, if you're gonna play in Endless, I think he might still be the best slowing character, but this other character is actually not even that expensive and is still like really good. Honestly, I might as well just rank him right now. This is Galleon Foxy. I think he right now is at the top. There might be another character who ends up being above him, but yeah, like, he has the best slowing support. So in terms of how much he slows, I believe without shiny he does 50%, which is the same amount as a shiny Crying Child, and then he goes up to 60%, I believe, with his shiny. And yeah, it's a big difference having that extra slow, especially since he also has 3 placements, which is actually like pretty important. And he also has a lot of range as well, and of course also does the damage. While sometimes his damage actually does become unimportant and like useless, like especially at really late in Endless, it's still a very nice thing to have because he costs 8,000 to place. He can literally just be used as a mid game tower, which is why he's placed very high in S tier and is probably the best mid-game tower in the game, just because he's also the best slowing support character, and I think slowing supports are just really good. Since he has the best slow, he also has like the most coverage with 3 placements. You can have like each of them shooting different enemies to maximize the slow. Like one of them targets first, one of them targets last, the other one targets close or something, and you're just slowing the entire field. And his splash is just pretty good as well. So his DPS is 3,600. That's like pretty low compared to like basically all these characters except for Scott, but since he's also like doing splash and slowing, well, yeah, very good, which earns him a spot really high up in S tier. But yeah, moving on, we have some pretty low rated characters. We can go ahead and speedrun them. There's not really much to say about them. They've obviously gotta still release characters that aren't secrets and nightmares. So in terms of Nightmare Cupcake, I don't really know specific placements, but I know that they're in pretty mid tier, which is C tier. In terms of who they're better than, actually, man, they could also just be barely usable. They just do not do that much DPS, and they're actually pretty pricey for what they are. I think I am just gonna keep them there. I don't really know. They're just basically another bad epic that they've released. Moving on to some mythics that are actually pretty good, I would say. I think he could probably earn his spot in the top of C tier. He's really good, and we'll go ahead and include Nightmare Balloon Boy. I think they can both actually be at the bottom of solid usually, because they're actually both solid. I think Balloon Boy is better. Like, he does less DPS but costs way less, and I think they did these mythics pretty good. But yeah, I'll probably have to do some more testing and know for sure where they rank, but they're obviously not the best of the best. They're just solid for what they are. And then this Nightmare Chica, yeah, I'll just put them in D tier. They're also like not that good. They're just too expensive, but they basically, I think they do like around 500 DPS, which is just not that much. That's like completely maxed out with all their placements. And while they do have at least the splash ability, it's just still not very good. And then yeah, this guy, he has good DPS but has really bad range, which he's like somewhere down here. But yeah, you're obviously not really going to use those characters that much. Just like the mythics, I would recommend, like, yeah, you can use them. Moving on, we have Fredbear, who I think can actually just go up there with Spring Bonnie. Like, he's just the best range support. Let's actually include the next range support, who is this guy, who I think will just end up there. With range support, I don't think it's quite as good as slowing or damage support. Like, if we have to rank just the supports and not the characters themselves, I would say damage support, slow support, and then range support is like the rankings of the best supports. We also have another niche support, which is the moneymaker, and we only have one moneymaker character, which is the Fazcade, who I think is practically useless. I only really find use in them in co-op, but I don't really play co-op that much, and yeah, just it taking another slot in your team is just not good, which is why they're in barely usable. But yeah, he's the best range support. Plus Trap is actually pretty close, surprisingly, but I do think it sucks that they even dropped this Plus Trap in general, because they just don't really have a use right now. So the reason why I think they're close is because this Plus Trap is actually like way cheaper than this Fredbear, while only having a little bit worse support. But as of right now, like, you might as well spend the extra cash to have that extra range. But I'm sure if there's like some certain challenge or something, you would want to have this Plus Trap, because like you don't want to spend as much money and whatnot. And also, this Plus Trap is way more accessible for the majority of the players. There's gonna be less than 1,000 of these shiny Fredbears, and if you're gonna use them, like, shiny Plus Trap is gonna be better than this guy without shiny, you know? So if you can't afford to get a shiny Fredbear, then having a shiny Plus Trap is just as good. And it's like the same thing with this guy. Like, if you have a shiny of him, then it's better than having this guy without shiny. So I want to make that clear. Like, if you, even though these two are higher than these two, if you have these two as shiny, then and they would be better as these guys without shiny. And I actually think that all of these characters, all 4 of these characters, I wouldn't even recommend using them if they don't even have shiny. But for Crying Child, yeah, you can still use them without shiny. Same with Galleon, but of course having them shiny gives that little extra boost, which makes them a good amount better. I think the shiny is not nearly as important as these guys having shiny. But yeah, that's the supports. We'll go ahead and move on to Flame Empress Chica, who is obviously S tier, but actually pretty like low in S tier, surprisingly. They're obviously better than War Machine. I think, nah, War Machine's probably still better than Sky. I think he might just be the lowest S tier character, and will probably get booted off by next patch. But like, he's still really good for what he is, just like a cheap and good mid-game character with a splash ability. But his DPS kind of is like getting outdated. Like, everyone here has better DPS than him. It's just the fact that he costs less to place and max down. But yeah, this Flame Empress, kind of a similar situation where her DPS is just not that good. It's at 3,600, which is the same as his Galleon Foxy, who is only 500 more to place down and has the same amount of placements and is doing that slowing effect. And I'm pretty sure he has more range as well. So obviously Galleon Foxy is way better than her right now, which is kind of weird that they're in the same tier, but like, yeah, they're still in the same tier for how good they are. But yeah, we're most likely gonna see buffs for her eventually, especially since we saw buffs for him, but we will see. For now, she's just like here in S tier. I think there is a little bit of a gap with like the top 5 of S tier and whatnot, but yeah, we'll move on to the next character, who is Nightmare, who is a very strange character to rank. So for now, put him like right here. Maybe he could go lower and he could go higher. So with Nightmare, he costs 10,000 to place, pretty cheap, and can be maxed out pretty fast and whatnot. Like the same plus sides as this Puppeteer. And I also think that he could be higher than this Puppeteer. I'll do it for now. Basically, the thing is, his DPS right now maxed out is only 1,000, which is 600 less than this Puppeteer. But he also has the best range at 35, which is way better than like all these characters besides 7Cs. And he has a poison AoE. So the thing is, his DPS might actually be better than what it seems just because of the poison mechanic, which is like a couple more characters that also have the poison mechanic that we will see later on, that I'm not completely sure where to rank them. From what I can tell right now, the poison ability is basically just an extra tick of damage, and what that means is that it does another hit of damage basically. So that would basically double his DPS to 2,000, which is obviously way more impressive. And with him doing AoE and having 35 range, that would literally put him like an A tier, I think, honestly. But for now, like, if we don't consider the poison damage, which is hard to calculate for me right now, this is definitely a situation where I would want to use him right now with the update where it shows the DPS, like how much damage he's dealt, and we can directly compare him to this Nightmarion. But yeah, for now, I'll just leave him here. I'll for sure have to come back to this and test him out and then see where he lands in placements. Next we have Endo04, who I believe has like a burn damage. He's just cone AoE with burn, and burn might be another thing where it does damage over time, but from what I can tell, I don't think it does. And he only has like 900 DPS, which is not very impressive. And so because of that, I don't think he would be ranked very high. This guy is not that high. Oops. I didn't really organize the characters that I've already placed here. But yeah, I didn't really want to rank everyone again. You can just check out my last tier list video. Check out like basically the placements for most of these characters that I've already placed down. But yeah, he's probably like around here or something, like barely even reaching 1,000 DPS. Like he's not even like doing that much better than these characters. He could be at the top here. It doesn't truly matter. He's just basically a pretty mid character. And except we have Freddles, who like is also pretty polarizing. Like they're another one of these summonable characters, and as you can see, I'm not very impressed by these summonable characters. And including this cupcake tank, but I think he might be like the only summonable character who can be useful, especially if their summons actually works, which I'm not completely sure if it does. It also depends on how much what the summons do, because like from what I remember, the summons would just summon Freddles who cap out at like 1,000 HP, which they would take damage from the enemies with that HP. But like it depends on like if they hit the first enemy and then they had like 800 HP, would they continue on and do 200 HP to the next character? If that's the case, that would be good, but if they just like die right away just from hitting one enemy, then that wouldn't be very good. But yeah, their DPS would technically be pretty good, so it would be above like these starters and actually higher than this Endo, but this Endo does have splash damage, so I do think this Endo could have better value than the Freddles. Next up is Springtrap, who is S tier. I think he's probably lower than the Galleon Foxy, and also probably lower than this Glitch Puppeteer actually, because he does less DPS and has less range. They both cost the same, but you have to spend extra money on this character to place on a third one. But Springtrap's upgrades are actually more expensive as well, so there's like some arguments against both of them, like who can be higher than the other. But for now, I think I'll have Springtrap lower than Glitch Puppeteer, especially considering that there is an evolution of the Springtrap. So you guys will see soon where they get placed. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and move on to the next character, which is Nightmare Mangle, who is another character who has that poison ability I was talking about earlier. And yeah, it's very confusing like where they would be placed. So right now their DPS normally is just 3,000, which is not very good considering that they only have 20 ranged max out, and actually costs more to place right now at 1,700 with a placement cost of 17,000. But yeah, they are at least doing AoE, but like with the small range, it doesn't truly matter. And the poison ability, like if it does do like an extra hit with the poison, then their DPS could technically be 6,000, which is obviously yet again very impressive. So they would go an S tier. They won't be at the top because their range is still bad. So yeah, for now, this Nightmare Mango will stay there from what I can tell. I think that is a proper placement at very good. I also need to do that test where I see how much damage they actually do in a real story event. Next up, we have Nightmare Bonnie, who I think is at the bottom of S tier, excluding the supports, of course. So the thing with him is that, well, he no longer has the best DPS. He still has the second best DPS. Another character has more DPS, which we'll get into soon. But yeah, him having basically 10,000 DPS, that is just like way more than most of these characters. It's almost double the amount of Glitch Puppeteer. But yeah, the catch is that he's single target and has really bad range, but like with the supports, you can really make up for the range. Like it's pretty crazy, and I still think he's very good despite that. While I could be like gassing him too much, like honestly, I'm just thinking about it right now, I might just put him at the top of A. But yeah, like the range being really bad is very important, and it's also like single target. But yeah, like the fact that he actually does a lot of DPS makes him a lot more impressive. But yeah, moving on, we have Nightmare Fredbear, who I believe will just go in B tier, solid use. So he's like solid usually. I think he finally dethrones like a Withered Golden Freddy for like best cheap DPS character. Is there anyone who like goes above him? Only really like Circuit Breaker, but yeah, not too impressive. He is solid. Like he actually does a little less DPS in this Withered Golden Freddy, but he has a lot more range, so I do think he barely beats his Withered Golden Freddy, and also has 3 placements, so probably costs either the same or less to actually fully max out. But yeah, another single target character, so not the most impressive. Oh, actually no, War Machine Foxy. Yeah, he's easily the best like single target DPS character for a cheap price. So yeah, if you're looking for a character like that, it's easily War Machine Foxy. And yeah, we're getting close to the evolutions. I think, yeah, that is everyone from the Fnaf 4 update. We're now talking about basically the rest of the characters that have dropped since then. And we're gonna start off with Goliath Endo Freddy, who is actually not in top 3. I will go into that pretty soon once I rank the top 3. But he used to be top 3, I think, literally before this update, in fact, the one with the evolutions. So yeah, there is an evolution who I believe is just better than him now. So this guy is insane because he does the best DPS, which is 11,000 DPS, which is a good amount more than like Nightmare Bonnie. But it's not just that, he also does the AoE and actually has good range. The catch is that he's easily the most expensive character in the game. He would literally cost more than like an entire normal team to max out. But yeah, like in Endless, he is a must run. Like the cost in Endless really doesn't matter. And in some story modes, you can actually save up enough to place him down, and which would be worth placing him down. Like I think he can do really good in some story mode stages where you can place him down. You obviously just can't place him down as a starter like in any of the stages at all. There is a stage which is Fnaf 4 Night 6 where you can actually place down most of these characters. I think actually, yeah, you can place down every character except for him in that stage. Oh, and Shadow Bonnie. The cost is 20,000, so that literally includes like practically every character. But yeah, really good character. I'm gonna go ahead and move on though. Not really much else to say. He's pretty much everything you want besides the cost. Moving on, we have these two epics who are still just more epics that they have included in the game. Not very good, except for this one. He could be like up here. He's actually like pretty similar to Pirate Withered Foxy's Performance, who is a pretty outdated character. But he is an epic, so that will get a pass. And this Chica just doesn't have enough DPS. She's literally just an upgraded version of this Chica because her DPS is 162, I think, which is literally like bottom 5 characters who can actually do damage. Like there's obviously characters who do 0 damage, but yeah. Moving on, we have Rave Bonnie, who I think just makes it here in A tier. Yeah, like here is perfectly fine. Definitely not better than this character, I would say, even like without considering the poison ability. He just doesn't do enough DPS. It's very strange what they did with this character. Like this character does more DPS. I think they should just buff both of these characters and then call it a day, you know. Seems like no buffs inside for either of them for now. But yeah, it's really strange how they made like 2 Bonnie characters really similar who like are rocking the guitar, and they're actually pretty subpar compared to other characters. Mostly that Bonnie. This Bonnie is actually like viable for the most part. They could be below a Circuit Breaker because he only does 2,500 while this Circuit Breaker does 4,500. But at least he does do the AoE, so I think I'll keep him there for now, especially since I was saying that AoE is a lot more viable. And I think he does have more range, so yeah, there is some good enough arguments to put him on top or put him above the Circuit Breaker. This is the last character I will be ranking before top 3, and then I'll be ranking the rest of the evolutions. But yeah, this is Hydra Mangle, who I believe will go like right here, I think. Hydra Mangle has 6,000 DPS. I think they could just be below Glitch Puppeteer actually. It's surprising. Glitch Puppeteer is still really relevant. It's basically because they do the crazy DPS and the big range. But yeah, Hydra Mangle has less range but does 500 more DPS. Hydra Mangle does have the better splash ability at least, but I think that extra range and a little bit extra damage does make Glitch Puppeteer slightly better. But yeah, these two characters just do a lot more damage than Springtrap. Springtrap actually has the best AoE ability compared to these two. Like that splash ability is just extremely strong. Really satisfying and nice to use. It's just that he doesn't do as much damage and doesn't have as much range. But yeah, now we're gonna be talking about who is the best starter. So we have 3 starters, and I want to go ahead and start off with Witch Chica actually, because yeah, the news is that they are no longer the best starter. I think so. I have to talk about this. I think I actually was wrong the whole time, thinking Tarnished wasn't the best starter when I made the last tier list. I mean, it actually would have been possible that Witch Chica was the better starter at the time, but ever since then, like especially with FNAF 4, I've realized that Tarnish is just better of a starter. The reasons being is because Witch Chica just does not do nearly as much DPS as Tarnish, even against swarm enemies. Like, she just doesn't do enough DPS and only costs a little bit less than Tarnished. And that money making ability with Witch Chica doesn't really help out when Tarnished can literally be the mid-game character that you want. Like, he fulfills the role of a mid-game character. That's how much DPS he does with like supports and whatnot. So yeah, I do think he goes in S tier, and yeah, that is the reveal. The new Purple Guy is basically just the replacement for Tarnished Spring Bonnie. Now, Purple Guy is another weird character. They've been dropping a lot of these weird characters where they don't just directly tell us the DPS of them, which is good that they added that new update where we can compare the stats of like how much damage they've dealt. But yeah, like someone has already done that, and Purple Guy does do more DPS, which makes sense. Like, they both cost 600 to place, they both have 3 placements, and they both have the same amount of levels, which is 5 levels. And they're both also single target DPS characters that are starters. So yeah, they have 1-on-1 comparison. They're both also basically the same character. Like, it should be William Afton inside the suit. But yeah, Purple Guy was released, you know, literally last weekend, and this Tarnished character was released a while ago, so he is meant to be the replacement for Tarnished. If we don't include the turrets, which is like what adds on to his DPS caps out at least without enchants and supports, 1,200, I believe, maybe 1,600. It's one of those two, which is actually like notably worse than Tarnished, who goes up to 2,000 DPS. But because he has the turrets, he actually does end up doing more DPS. I don't believe we know what the turret's DPS actually is, but there has been people who have been saying what the DPS is. It's something that, like, it's some sort of damage per second, like every 0.05 seconds or 0.1 seconds, because the turrets do attack fast. And you'll notice it when the Purple Guy is attacking the enemies. He only attacks every second, like his stats say. But once he installs the turrets, he's doing both attacks. You can tell from the enemy's HP. But yeah, the turrets are adding some damage to him, and it has to be over 2,000 just because he does do more damage overall than Tarnished. So yeah, Purple Guy is the new best starter because of that. And we'll go ahead and finish the top 3. And yes, the other 2 are actually new evolutions. And so, and in terms of the AoE character who's top 3, it is the evolution Springtrap. I forgot his name. I think it's Agonized Springtrap. And then this evolution Withered Bonnie, I think his name is, I forgot. I'll quickly talk about them. Let's actually show the stats. So the only way we can see their DPS currently is through the wiki. But yeah, his max DPS is 7,500, and then his Fractured Bonnie has the same maxed out DPS. So yeah, there's actually quite a gap between these 2 characters, considering that they both have the same amount of DPS. Meanwhile, this Springtrap also only has 2 placements, so he costs less to max out, I'm pretty sure. And also has the splash ability. So he does do a good amount less DPS than Goliath. It's like 4,000 less DPS, which is very notable. But he costs a lot less to place and max out, which is a lot more important for story mode, which makes him a lot more usable in all the content. So since he can be used like as efficiently in like story mode, like basically being the best story mode character, maybe, probably not, probably like one of the starter characters, like the new Purple Guy. But yeah, since he has really good performance and is still really good for Endless, he does end up being the best AoE character in my opinion. But yeah, I don't really mind Goliath taking that place. I think they're actually really close. But yeah, I just see myself being able to use this character a lot more often. And in terms of Fractured, oh yeah, his name is Fractured Bonnie compared to Valkyrie Chica. He does 1,100 more DPS, which isn't too much more, especially considering he's a lot more expensive to place down and max out. So I can also see Valkyrie Chica taking that place. But yeah, like, I don't actually think this Fractured Bonnie is top 3. Like, I would place him like right here. Like, I think they're both really close. So yeah, in terms of like actual top 3, I'll actually talk more about it once I finish ranking everyone. I'm actually gonna go ahead and rank the secrets real quick. So the best secret is this Chica, who I think is in very good tier. I think probably just better than Mangle so far, with more range and more DPS. And same with this Mangle. I think this Mangle actually could be lower than this Mangle, maybe higher. So the DPS, like, this Mangle has 3,000 DPS, this Mangle has 3,600, and this Chica has 3,750. Now about this Chica, it says that she does AoE, but it's still the same explosion attack. If it actually was like AoE, then they would go to S tier, not like at the top or anything, probably like here, maybe like even down here. I would have to like try them out, but they actually have like good range and good enough DPS. So yeah, they belong in very good tier because they're very good. It's a very good evolution, and yeah, and Mango is really close to that performance, but still is a little worse, you know. But yeah, as for this Freddy, he could probably just be at the top of B tier. Yeah, he is noticeably worse. Even though he has the AoE ability, he does like 1,000 less DPS, 1,200 in fact, while still costing more to place and max out than both of them, I believe. Well, they actually all have 3 placements, and before they used to have only 2, which is like the big thing that made them do a lot better in performance. But yeah, they did get a good stats boost. He also got like 4 more range from his original character. These guys also got more range. But yeah, overall really good evolutions. It does seem like these evolutions do have a significant boost in their stats. Like, these characters literally are like barely usable. Now they're actually like usable. These secrets obviously aren't like the best of the best. Meanwhile, he's a little bit of a different case since he's like an exclusive character, but I don't think he's really that high up. So, but yeah, either way, evolutions are really good. We're gonna go ahead and move on to these characters. Surprisingly, this guy has 3 placements, which actually puts him up really high because that means his damage per second is the same as this Nightmare Bonnie, but he also has a piercing mechanic. The thing is that his range is also really bad, but it is a little bit better. Like, his range maxes out at 20, while Bonnie is at 15 or 18, I believe. Either way, it's a very good difference in having that extra range. And I believe since he does do piercing, I think it's like cone piercing now, his attacks do go beyond his range. So yeah, either way, still surprisingly really good. And yeah, out of like the nightmares, like the 3 nightmares, he's the only one that got a 3rd placement. If he didn't have that 3rd placement, he would go down quite a lot. Well, actually not quite a lot. He would probably just be like above the Hydra Mangle. That extra 3rd placement really adds a lot. And as for this puppeteer, I have to actually show you guys this. So we'll go ahead and take a look at their DPS, and you guys are actually gonna see really quickly, it's surprisingly really bad. Like, you can see that their damage caps out at 800 for every 3 seconds, which is really bad. And that means that their DPS is at 533, which is literally a lot worse than like even Phantom Foxy. Phantom Foxy caps out at 100 DPS. So if this actually is their DPS, they would literally go like to C and D tier, and it would like their evolution would just be way worse than their actual character. However, there is obviously a catch. So it says continuous piercing type, and it says here that with every attack can deal 10 ticks of damage. A single attack can max out at 8,000 damage, which means they're doing 8,000 damage every 3 seconds. And if you divide 8,000 by 3 and then multiply that by 2, so there is 2 placements. That means that their max DPS is actually at 5,333. You literally just multiply this by 2. This is basically just saying that they're doing this 800 damage every 3 seconds 10 times every 3 seconds, which means that you just multiply their DPS by 10, potentially 11 as well. If these ticks are separate from the original attack, that actually increases their DPS by another 1,600, or maybe a little less, probably just 800. But yeah, I don't know. It's really deceiving. I do believe that their DPS is actually more around 5,000 than 500, and that's obviously a huge difference. So yeah, I'm gonna consider that they're actually doing 5,000 DPS and 500 DPS. Like if they're doing 500 DPS, they're literally like worse than this Chica, so they would probably just be barely usable just because of how mad I would be at how bad they are. But yeah, their DPS is actually like comparable to this Glitch Puppeteer, but their range is still less than Glitch Puppeteer, so I think that Glitch Puppeteer is still surprisingly as good as he is. There must be something that I'm missing, because he probably shouldn't be better than these characters. But yeah, for now, I'm still thinking he is better. This is definitely another situation where I would have to try out that new update and see who actually does more damage in story mode and endless and whatnot. Probably endless since it's longer. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and remove these characters and see what the actual top 3 would look like. And yeah, like probably still him at first and you at second. Like it is really close, so you're at second. And I will probably still put you at third because you're a starter character. But yeah, it's really hard to also compare starter characters to literally a character who costs like 1,000 more than him and does also 1,000 times better of a performance. But yeah, you can't really compare these characters at all because they fulfill way different roles. But yeah, if we're not including him, probably just this guy. Like these 3 are just really surprisingly good. I could also see him being higher than this Springtrap, but the fact that he does way less range, I do think he's a little worse. But yeah, that is the tier list. I also forgot to mention that I have another tier list that we can see right here that is just gonna categorize everyone. You can just see for yourself like all the placements. I think this is more of a like accurate placements. Like I put more time into placing everyone, so you can go ahead and pause the video and look at the placements if you want to. And there's a lot of characters who can change placements by a lot depending on like what they actually do. Like the poison characters, Nightmare and Nightmare Mangle, they could actually be a lot higher or a lot lower depending on how strong poison is. And basically all the summoning characters, like this is the only summoning character that I actually would have placed high up, just because I think their summons might actually be good. But like they need to fix the weird glitch where the summoning characters just go off of track. I believe even this Freddles actually has that issue, but from what I can tell, I don't think they do. But if they do, then that's obviously really bad. And yeah, I could easily just place them like really low if their summons is actually not that good. So yeah, I definitely need to experiment on that and basically on every other character. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoy the new changes to the channel. I will be uploading daily again soon, in about a week from now actually. And I would also be updating this tier list in the next update. And I'll try to experiment and test out as many of these characters as I can. Be sure to leave a comment down below on which characters you really want me to relook. If you thought I placed them down too low or placed them too high, and then tell me who you want me to compare them to like really see the difference. And also just let me know on any placements you guys might disagree. But yeah, for now, this is the finalized tier list. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.